program that we do once a month. Pre-pandemic, we would go to coffee shops and ask readers and just passersby their thoughts and questions as to what to do to improve our newspaper, as well as improve what we do in the community, or how the community should be confronting issues that it's facing. So it's very much an open-ended conversation. And so with the pandemic, we decided to go virtual. And so from time to time, we'll have special guests on. I'll introduce our special guest here in just a moment. Let me give you a little bit of a primer, if you will, on AirMeet. It's a new program we're trying. It offers you the opportunity, if you have questions, that you can send me a chat or raise your hand, and we'll try to bring you into the conversation so that you can ask Steve directly. So Steve or myself. So we're still kind of learning the tools, so we appreciate your patience. And certainly we'll kind of fumble through this together is my thinking. So I want to, in the background, my community engagement editor, Madeline LaRue, is kind of jiggling all the buttons there to make this thing work. And so I appreciate all she's doing, and she may jump in and offer some advice or help direct us technologically through this time. So we'll get started here in just a second. We're going to give a little bit more time for folks to jump in, and we'll go from there. So, all right. So I tell you what, Steve, if you'll click your camera button down there on the bottom of the screen, you'll join the conversation with me.
Camera button
should be on the first button on the left down there. You'll see live. There you go. Hey.
That was on your screen. I thought that was you.
No.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's going well. Good. So, Steve, first of all, thanks for the late hours here. I know that's not your normal work hours, but I appreciate you sticking around. You're at the courthouse, I'm assuming, or you?
No, my wife set me up at the house here, so hopefully we don't have a very quick speed, but hopefully we'll go slow.
Okay. Well, folks, if you don't know, this is Steve Korsmeyer. He's the Cole County Clerk. Primarily, one of the biggest responsibilities Steve has as County Clerk is supervising and running the elections here in Cole County, whether it's the national elections that national, state, and local elections that we had in November to the one that's coming up in April, on April 6th. Steve, how long have you been County Clerk?
I'm in my second term, so I'm on my 7th year.
Okay.
So each term is 4 years.
So how big is your staff there?
I have five deputy clerks.
Okay. All right. And so as I mentioned, the municipal and school board elections are just right around the corner. We're coming off this huge national state election, which was kind of a challenge, I would assume, because of the pandemic. A lot of very special procedures were put in place to help folks maintain safety as well as have the right to vote. So how will the voting experience be similar, and how will it be different for this April 6th election than it was in November?
So basically the legislators wrote the law last year, the COVID legislation, to where it would automatically expire at the end of 2020. So December 31st of 2020, all the COVID excuses have expired. So we have to go back to using our old envelopes. We had special envelopes and everything printed for absentee voting just for the COVID, for the excuses. So everything is back to normal now, like it has been for years. There's no more COVID excuse. You can't just have a ballot mailed to you. You have to have an valid absentee reason, like you're going to be absent from the county on election day. You have to be, you can either be like disabled or not be able to get out to the polls. You can vote absentee. You can vote absentee for a religious excuse. You can vote absentee if you work for the election authority, like for us. If you're working for us as an election judge, you're not working in your polling place, then you can come and vote absentee. Those are the basic reasons again.
Okay, so that's somewhat unusual. It's not unusual for Missourians, but in other states, they may not have to have an excuse or a reason for voting absentee. So kind of go through again, what are the reasons that you can vote absentee for this election?
So there's a few reasons, like you can vote absentee if you are going to be absent from the county on election day. If you're not able to get to the polls, like if you're handicapped or you're sick or something, you can't get to the polls, you can vote absentee. Say like if you have COVID and you know that you're quarantined for 15, 14 days or whatever, then you could request an absentee ballot, not because you have COVID, but because you are quarantined, because you are sick. You know what I mean? That's part of the excuse, but it's not listed on there.
Okay.
If you're an election authority, you could vote absentee. Some of our election judges, they don't work in their polling place.
Okay. All right. So you made mention of the folks who are at the polls. I mean, so you said you had 5 on your staff now, but then it kind of swells on election day, right? So you have judges at the polls. What other kind of resources do you have at hand?
So we'll probably have close to 130, 140 election judges that will train. And generally what we do is when we bring them in for training, then we allow them to absentee vote at that time. We train at the sheriff's training room. We go over all the stuff related to elections, and we'll have to go over the laws again, how they changed and what's on the ballot and stuff. Mm-hmm. When we train all those, well, then at the end of the training, we ask them if they want to go absentee vote, just to go across the street and absentee vote while they're at our office close to it. So. And then we'll have, on election night, of course, we have a lot of other people. We have receiving teams there to receive all the ballots and all the stuff at the end of the day. We have count watchers in the back that make sure the ballots and the TMs and all the counts are right. But yeah, we have quite a few extras. And then, of course, we test our machines before every election. So we have party representatives that come and do that. And then we test them afterwards. And then we also have a count verification team that comes in and hand counts a precinct before we certify the election. All that happens afterwards.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. So more so on the national level, you kind of made reference to this with folks who are watching the count and the procedures there. More so on a national level than on the local level. There was a lot of consternation about the safety of elections, the accuracy of the counts, if you will. As a county clerk, what kind of steps does your office take to ensure that all votes are legal and that all votes are counted? What kind of steps do you have in place to kind of maintain the integrity of the election?
Basically, what the state law requires is that we have party representatives in every part of the election. Like, we don't count ballots ourselves. We have party representatives that do all of that. We have Democrat, Republican people that come in that committee people send to us. And it's the same way on election day. At every polling place, you have to have 2 representatives from each major party. So we have 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats at every polling location. You know, they're the ones that actually make sure that everything is going according to the law. If they have issues or problems, they call us and we tell them what the law is. But basically, they watch everything. What we do is, like at our polling places, you know, when you do your ballot, they hand you your ballot, you fill it out, you put it in a machine. Well, then those judges at the end of the evening, they take those ballots out of the machine, they count them, and they sort them, make sure they're all in the right order, because we have to make sure every one of them's initialed. And then they sort them and get them all in order, and then they bring all those ballots and that TM back to us in the evening. And then what we do then is we receive those ballots, make sure their counts are right, take their keys, the TM, receive all their supplies that they brought back. And then those ballots and those TMs go into the count watchers. We have 2 people back in there, a Democrat, Republican, and they verify the numbers again. We put the TM in a computer. It reads the results. We had 1,000 people vote. Yes, your paperwork says you have 1,000 voters or ballots, and then they sign off on all that. So really, we're just administrative. We just make sure that everything flows, but your Democrat and Republicans are the ones that actually keep an eye on everything. What happens here is those ballots are all out at the polling place, and they're all recorded there. Like what I saw on the national news was they have, like some counties here may have it, but it's a central counting facility where all those ballots, instead of being counting at your polling places, they all come back to the courthouse. Then they're run through a machine and counted at that point. They're not counted when you fill them out. And then they do have systems like that. We just don't have that. But all those ballots come back to the central voting location, and then they're run through a machine and counted. So then I would imagine the states that do that still have party representatives and stuff there. But I think that's where a lot of the issues came in that I saw on the news, was like at these voting centers where all these ballots come in and then get counted. I
got you. Okay. So this is all happening, polls close at 7. Mm-hmm. So this happens after 7 o'clock. And that evening, votes are counted. Then there's a recount also, right?
So at 7 o'clock, you have your supervisors there, your party representative supervisors in each group. We have a supervisor from each party, and they'll shut everything down and count the ballots. And then they'll take that to them and bring it to us. And then nothing gets counted after that, hand counted, until the certification day. And then we pick a precinct to hand count to make sure that the machine's counting correctly.
I gotcha. Okay. So we have a reader who has a question for you. I'm going to slip one in here real quick. So how many precincts are there in Cole County?
So we have 28, and then we are a precinct. We're an absentee, so 29.
Okay.
If you count ours.
Okay. So hang on just a second. We have a question coming from a reader for you. So just a second.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Hi, Steve. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. First of all, I want to say thank you for all your hard work. I know you and your team and the volunteers put in a lot of work for an election, so I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I have a question. Every election cycle, I see on social media and some friends sometimes will text me and say, we're having problems again with getting enough election judges and watchers, and they're always pointing to the Democratic Party. So the question is, what communication do you do, and do you have problems? Is there something we need to do in advance of the April election to help make sure that you have the people you need on both sides of the parties? And thanks for answering.
Thank you. Yeah, we did have, right now we have, both of our party representatives are very active. Penny and Josh are both right there if I need them. Josh has already asked me. He's the Democratic representative committee person. He already asked me if we needed help. Last year, they both give us a bunch of people, enormous amount of people to come in and help, especially with the COVID, since we had a curbside vote people. So we actually have a really nice list of alternatives you can call. If we start going through an alternative list, of course, and can't get people, but as of right now, we have plenty of help. Yes, we do, and that's very nice.
All right. That's good to know. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks, Julie. So, Steve, at this point in the election season, a couple elements are in play for voters. Registration. You can still register to vote for the April 6th election, and absentee voting. So if a person isn't registered to vote, what do they need to do to make sure they can vote on April 6th? And what is the deadline for registering?
So I just happen to bring my cheat sheet here. So, yeah, the last day to register to vote is March the 10th. They have to be registered. It's the fourth Wednesday before the election, but the official date is March the 10th at 5 o'clock. You have to be registered to vote this election. So if you're not registered, you can go on our website. There are forms on there. You go to the Secretary of State's website, vote online, or register online. Fill out the paperwork, get it to us. You can fax it, email it. Sometimes the online registrations, it's hard to sign a good signature. So sometimes we'll mail you back a registration card asking you to please re-sign so we can get your signature in the system. But it's really easy to do. The forms are right there. So anybody that has computer access, if you don't have computer access, call us. Tell us who you are, give us your address, and we'll mail you a form. We'll just put a form in the mail to you, and you can fill it out and mail it back to us.
Okay. All right. We've got another question here for you. Hang on just a second. All right, Mary Shantz, you have a question for Steve?
I do. Steve, I was on the Secretary of State's website today because I was trying to find election results for past elections, not just by county, but by, for example, I went to Cole County and I could get all the election results, but I'd like to find it by ward and precinct. Does that level of detail, I thought it used to be in the blue books, but I'm not finding it anywhere. Do you know if anyone maintains that data by ward and precinct within a county?
So you're just talking specific to Cole County?
Well, for right now, I'm just thinking, yes, of Cole County. I went in because what I wanted to do is I wanted to see in the last couple of elections, I was looking to see what the voter, not just the voter turnout, because I can get that easy in terms of the number of votes cast, and I can get that even by ward and precinct, I think. But what I was trying to do was get like something that would say like Ward 1, Precinct 1, and then it would have like the candidates that were running, let's say at the I'll just pick the national election, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and then it would show you in Ward 1, Precinct 1, how many votes those two candidates got. Because what's on the Secretary of State's web is you can go to Cole County and I can get that for the county. It breaks down who voted, how many voted for Trump, how many voted for Biden, how many voted for whoever else was on the ballot. But I'd like to get it by ward and ward and precinct.
I think we have some different reports that we can run that we don't publicize on our website.
Okay. So I should just call down to your office or come in?
If you call in and talk to Dawn, she could probably, maybe, I know I get some other reports that we don't necessarily publish that I look at when I try to figure out how many ballots and stuff to order.
Okay.
So if you call the office and kind of explain to them what you want, they could probably run you a specific report.
Okay, Steve, that's helpful. One other quick question that on this, can a person just come into your office to register to vote I mean, I know you have it set up with the window and everything for COVID, but can they come in and register there? Or do they have to do it by either calling you and having you mail it to them or going online?
Absolutely. They can come into our office. That's actually the best way to do it. If a person comes in our office and we can verify their identity at that time, then we can mail them a voter ID card right away. If they go online and register to vote and they don't produce any ID or give us any verification, then all they're going to get is a letter in the mail. It's going to say, when you go vote, then they'll verify your identity and you'll get a voter ID card at that time. And if they actually come into the office and we verify their identity and stuff, then they'll go to voter ID card right away.
Thank you, Steve. That's helpful.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. And I will say I have in past elections, we've done stories where we've went to Steve's office and they were able to break it down into wards and how things went. So,
yeah, we can get pretty deep. I think we just don't necessarily put all that out there, on the website. So,
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. Oops. Looks like we have another question, Steve. Hang on a second.
Well, they're drilling me hard tonight.
They are, man. Scott Randolph, welcome to the coffee.
Oh, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Steve, for being on tonight. Just following up on Mary's question, I think the data that she's asking for, isn't it on your abstract report that you post on the clerk's website?
There is a couple different, there's a communicative report and there's an abstract on there that breaks it really into detail. Usually they're both posted on our website. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Mary, if you go on the website and look at the report, it breaks it down, election results down by precinct. It's pretty it's pretty useful. It's really good data. I did have a question on registration. Some of us have been active in the past year or two on doing registration drives, trying to get more voters registered. What's your sense about as far as the percent of eligible voters that are registered in Cole County and Jeff City? Do we have a fairly robust number of citizens registered, or do we need to do a lot of work on that level in some areas of town?
I'm not sure what our population is anymore. It used to be around 75,000, and I think we have 54,000 registered voters. So I think the numbers, we've probably got a lot of people that are registered. The biggest problem is getting them to turn out in April. You know, if we can get more people to turn out, that would help a lot. But people constantly move in and out. I mean, we are always changing our voter rolls. So the more voter drives we do to keep people's information updated, the better, I think. If we can get their information updated in our system, it helps when they go to polling places because the addresses are correct and everything. It saves a lot of time at the polling location.
Okay, right. All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So a follow-up question along those lines, Steve. So I had a reader ask, didn't know if he was going to be able to be here tonight for the session. He wanted to know what your office does to educate and encourage young people who, as they're coming of voting eligibility, about the importance of registering to vote and voting. For instance, does your office provide material and have a relationship with the area high schools, 4-H, Boys and Girls Club, etc., to promote youth voter registration?
A couple of years ago, we did go to the high schools, got out and registered quite a few people. It's hard to get there, and because there's such a busy schedule. And now with COVID last year, of course, it was impossible to go. You couldn't get in. Most of them weren't even in session. But we did it 2 times. The first time we had a pretty good response. A lot of the schools had a good response. The second time we did not have a good response. The first time, like maybe, for instance, we went somewhere, we might have got 20 people registered. Well, the last time we went, we only got like 2. So I don't know if it was just a busier time, different time of the year, what was going on, but we have tried it a couple of different times. The first time it was successful. The second time it was not. So I think the high school kids just have too much going on. There's too much activity and stuff going on for them. But we did try it a couple times.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let me throw another question at you. So let's say a person wants to vote absentee. How can they make that happen? And what is the deadline for absentee balloting?
Well, like if they're going to be absent from the county on election day and they're able to come to the courthouse, we prefer them to come there and just vote absentee there. That we can mail them a ballot. If they want to request a mail-out ballot, they can fill out the form, send it to us, and then we can mail it to them and they can mail it back. But to initiate it, they either have to come to our office and request an absentee ballot, or they have to go fill out the form and then send it to us, email it, fax it, get it to us somehow. The people that, that just registered, still, they can't vote till they produce an ID. So although you've registered, like if you're not registered, if you register before the deadline and you want to vote absentee, you can't do that unless we have ID. So you either have to send ID with your registration, or you have to come into our office and show us the ID, and then you can absentee vote. But we have to be verified before you can. That makes sense? For the new registrants.
I think so, yes. So I'm a longtime voter. So refresh my memory. If I'm going to be out of the county, I can come over to the office, vote there absentee.
Yes.
Or I can ask you to send me a ballot to my house. Yes. Do I have to have that notarized before I mail it back to you?
It depends on what box you check. If you're just absent on election day, it has to be notarized. If you're incapacitated or home due to sickness and you can't get out to get it, then no, you don't have to have it notarized.
Okay. And what is the deadline by which I have to have it back in your hands so that it can be counted? So
you could bring it election day up till 7 o'clock.
Okay.
So you could carry it in, or you can have an immediate family member. You can't have, like if you're going to vote absentee and you don't want to mail it back, you can't have a neighbor bring it or your friend bring it. It has to be an immediate family member. Okay. Son, daughter, husband, wife. They cannot hand deliver a ballot back to us.
Okay. Or it has to arrive by the Postal Service by 5 p.m. or whatever time you get your mail.
Correct. Like if you have your neighbor bring your absentee ballot back to us at 6 o'clock on election day, we won't accept it. It has to be put in the mail. Well, you're not going to get it mailed back to us by 7 o'clock. But a family member can walk in and hand us a ballot at 5 till 7, and we'll accept it. We have our absentee team stays. That's why they purposely stay there till 7 on election day to receive any ballots that come in the mail.
Okay.
Or hand delivered.
All right. Okay. So I have another question here for you. So this is from Mel Callowell. You there, Mel?
I don't see anybody.
I don't either. So let me go ahead and throw another question at you.
Sure.
Okay? On April 6th, how do you identify which polling place you should visit, and what do you need to bring to the polls to vote? So let's say I'm a voter that's coming to the April 6th election. Where can I find out which polling place I should be at? And then what do I have to bring to the polls to vote?
So you should have your voter identification card. You should have received it. You should have one, a valid one. If you don't, call our office. We can look you up and we'll mail you a new one. But it has on there your polling location. It actually has all your municipalities and what districts you're in as far as your state rep.
Right.
All that's listed on the card. Now they're coming up here, I think.
Yeah.
So you should be able to tell all that from there. If you don't know, you can go on to the Secretary of State's website. There's a link to it on our website. You can go on there. You can enter your name. You can enter your address. You can get a sample ballot, and it also tells you your polling location and everything.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you can call us too. You can always call our office.
Okay. And what do I have to bring to the poll to be able to vote?
So you have to bring some form of verification. You have to bring your driver's license, your voter ID card. You can bring an electric bill with your name and address on it, a bank statement with your name and address on it. There's just a few things like that. I think you can use a passport. Just those things with your name and like your address that identifies you. You can use a student ID from a university. It has to be a college. It can't be a grade school or not a grade school, a high school.
Right.
So anything like we like to have a voter ID card or a driver's license because it scans into our machine. The barcode on it just scans, so it makes our line move faster. It makes your process move faster. Otherwise, the election judge has to type in all the information manually. So sometimes it goes to a different screen, and sometimes it just takes a little longer. But we'll find you if you forget it. Don't go back home to get it. Come in with some other ID, and we'll get you looked up.
So there are times, Steve, I'm quite absent-minded. So let's say I get to the polls, I've forgotten my ID. Don't ask me how I drove to the polls. I probably would get pulled over. How does your staff handle when the voter doesn't have an ID on them?
If they just come in with nothing and have, I left my wallet at home, I don't have any identification. So there is a process. There is a provisional blue envelope. They'll look you up, verify you're registered to vote. They'll give you a ballot. You can vote it. You can put it in a blue provisional envelope, and you can leave it in there. And if you want to come back and take it out of that envelope and put it in a machine later, you have to bring a photo ID. You can't accept anything but a photo ID to get it back out of that envelope. If you decide not to, then they bring that back to us in the evening. Well, the next day we go through those and we look them up. And if your signature matches the signature we have on file, then we accept that ballot.
Okay. All right.
If it doesn't match, that's where the online registrations come into play. If you sign a voter registration card online and then you sign your name differently and with an ink pen, sometimes they don't exactly match. That's why we always try to get people's signature on paper.
Okay. All right. Mel, welcome to Coffee. Do you have a question for Steve or myself?
I have, I'll have several, but I have a question, and this doesn't necessarily apply to the future, but there has been discussion in some parts of the country to reduce the number of polling places. Specifically, what is the total number that you are responsible for? And maybe that was mentioned earlier. And number two is, I have no objection, but I'm just wondering, what does it cost us to pay the workers who spend that long time at the polls? What is the county, and I'm sure the funding is adequate, but what is your funding required to do that?
So we have 28 polling locations, 29 if you count the absentee in our office. When I came into office, I think we had 35. So I've already reduced it because I wanted to get new equipment. So I kind of wanted to cut the cost back on some of the equipment. So we kind of combined a few. Some polling places were in the same building. They just had them separated and they had 2 machines in there. So I thought that was kind of silly. So I just combined them and gave 1 machine. The last presidential election, seeing all the people standing outside waiting in line, I see I don't see any way I can reduce any polling places in the future. They're just too crowded and there's too many people there. This April, if we have a 10% turnout, of course, every facility's adequate. You know, we don't have the long lines, but in the presidential election last November, we're lucky the weather was the way it was because there was lines outside every polling place, people stand outside. Now, if it had been cold, snowy, rainy day, it would have been miserable. I don't know what we would have done, but so I don't have any future plans to reduce any polling places. Our election judges, I believe the judges make $125 a day, and then the supervisors make $150, and then we do pay a mileage if they travel very far. So we try to keep people in their precinct.
Okay. So a follow-up question. So what kind of turnout are you expecting for this April 6th election?
The turnout that's historical turnout's around 10%. So I'm going to go with the 10% turnout. I still think we'll probably reach the 10%.
Yeah. I will say it's a very crowded ballot, though. Maybe that will draw some interest there. And this is where I'm going to jump in and offer a commercial for the News Tribune. We're just now starting to kick off a lot of our election coverage. We have some forums coming up mid-March, early to mid-March for school board races, council races, municipal judge. So our hope is that we'll help spur some interest and get you above that 10% historical level there. So
I hope so. It's a lot of work, and you know, we order enough ballots to vote 3 times that many people, and you know, it's the same expense where they're sitting there all day. You know, it's going to cost probably $35,000 to put on this election. You know, if people don't show up and turn out to vote, it's kind of a big waste, and we put a lot of effort into it. So I appreciate the support. If people get out and vote, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. So have you ever run out of ballots?
We run out one time a couple of years ago in Taos. Yeah, we had actually had enough ballots ordered, but they were not in the right precinct. They were in a different part of town.
Okay.
Instead of trying to go get them moved all the way back, we just printed some off the copy machine and took them out. It was quite a ordeal. We rushed them right out to Taos, and people were sitting there waiting to vote. And when we walked in, they cheered when we showed up with the paper ballots. It was very inconvenient because the next day we have to have people come in from each party, and we have to transfer all those ballots from all those votes from the paper onto a ballot, and then run it through a machine. So it was a lot of extra work to do that. Sure. So we don't like to do that.
Okay, so let's see. We got a couple more questions here. So let's see if Julie has a question again for you.
Hey, Steve, it's me again. Do you have any suggestions for us in the community that would help you or help the community with voter turnout, other than talking to all of our neighbors and friends? But do you have any thoughts or ideas for us who are interested in helping get voters out and to the polls?
You know, I'm not sure how to do that. I've tried different things. You know, and you advertise it, I guess, and just try to encourage people to get out to vote. It's very difficult, and the COVID doesn't make it any easier because you know, people don't want to get out. They don't want to be in that social distancing line. So you know, those local races, you know, those people on your school board where they're spending your tax money too. So those are the people you want to make sure you get the right people in office. You know, that hold the same values you hold, and the same way with your city council. You know, they're spending your tax dollars deciding what to do with them. So we would think that would have more of effect on the local people to where they'd want to get out and vote, and make sure that they got the people that hold their values in office. But we tried. It's kind of hard to get them to get up to vote. I'm not sure what to do about it. I'm open for suggestions if you have anything or could think of anything, but there has to be an interest there.
Well, I know we're working, some of the groups are working on just really making the candidates clear and like you said, how this affects how is your school money spent, policing, it affects your cities, your parks, your recreational areas, your roads, just everything that you can think of related to the way you live your daily life and drive and live in Jeff City. So, or Cole County. For me, it's Jeff City, but and Cole County too. So that's what we're focusing on. But I just didn't know if you had any thoughts either of ways that you think the volunteer groups could be more helpful on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know what to do. In the presidential election, you have 75% turnout, and a lot of people only vote every 4 years. I just don't really understand. I voted every election my whole life, and I don't know. I just raised that way, I guess. But I just don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what to do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So we'll go to our next question. I will say I think the first step is packing that ballot with candidates, and this April election is a great example of that. There have been a lot of municipal school elections where nothing against the incumbents. I mean, we have some great incumbents in these races, but it's always great to see there are people who are willing to serve, willing to contribute to the community and represent their friends and family in the community. So that's the first step, is getting people to run. And then I think that breeds the interest in getting voters out. So
got to get more people interested in the positions. Some of these small towns and villages, they just can't get people to run for their town boards and stuff. Well, if you had a few people run, it would definitely have an impact on the turnout, I'm sure. Sure.
Scott, do you have a question for Steve?
Well, my question was really kind of along the lines of the same question really Julie had. Although first I'll just say, Gary, I think your newspaper does an excellent job of getting information out there on the candidates. So
thank you, Scott.
Maybe if we just increased your readership in the town, that would help, right?
That was the first step.
At least
then we get more candidates. Then we get
more. No, we do. We try to, share a lot of your articles around, and I think that's very helpful. But I guess following up on Julie's point, our question, Steve, when I look at some of the precincts, there are some of them that are consistently low turnout. I know in this last election, if you had about 74% turnout overall for Cole County, but some of the precincts like Ward 2, Precinct 1 was only 37%. You've got a few of them that were in the low. I don't know the answers either, other than just trying to encourage more people to get out to vote. But do the polling locations have any impact on that?
I don't think the polling locations have anything. I think the neighborhoods have a lot to do with it. The different neighborhoods seem to have, some of them have lower turnout than others. So I'm not sure why that is or what that is. I don't really get any complaints on our polling places. I'm really surprised because some of them during some times are really packed. I very seldom get complaints on people that go vote and say your polling place is terrible, it's too small, it's inconvenient. When we move one, sometimes we get complaints. We're moving a couple this next election. We're moving out of the link. It's just too small and there's too much activity there. We're going back to McClung Park. And we have got a few people complain about that, trying to get up the hill and stuff. But it's not easy to find a place. A lot of people, you have to have a facility that has handicap accessibility, and it has to have parking, and it has to have restrooms, and a little kitchen for our poll workers. And a lot of the churches now have daycares, and you just can't. They don't want you there. They don't want the public going in and out anymore. So, and the public schools is definitely out because of school safety reasons. So it's very difficult to find a place.
Okay.
So, Steve, one of the readers, Julie, asked if access to transportation could make a difference in the polling places, asking if you think that's it. The ability to get to the poll, such as bus routes, things like that. Has there been any sort of coordination to see? Because, of course, the bus routes don't go that till 7 o'clock either. So has there been any sort of look to see if there's a way to make it easier for folks who maybe don't have a car to get there?
Now, I haven't had any complaints from people that said, I can't get there. And if they would call and tell me that, then we would let them vote absentee. We would mail them a ballot absentee because they would be like confined, not due to an illness, but due to other reasons. So we would let them vote that absentee ballot. And we do have our permanent disabled list for people like that are not able to get out. Then we can put them on that list and get them a ballot. But I haven't really had anybody call to complain to me that said, and if I did, what I would do is I'd call my party representatives and have them, make arrangements to get them a right. Because I think they do offer that sometimes.
So would it be appropriate for a story that we publish when we kind of talk about how you can vote absentee for us to be able to share that if a transportation issue arises, they should contact your office as far as finding a solution?
I think it'd be probably better off if you told them to contact their party chairman.
Okay.
Because, if they're a Democrat, they don't want a Republican bringing them back, getting them a ride probably. So I think if if they were a Republican or Democrat, they're going to call their party chair for a ride. And they could make arrangements for it. I think it would be better if it stayed out of my office.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Follow-up question from me. So, mail-in ballots. Going back to the national election, national discussion on elections, what's your feeling about mail-in ballots? Do you think it's something that would improve the voting process, would compromise it? Do you have an opinion on it?
The last election, we didn't really have a choice with the COVID. I mean, there were so many elderly people, not really old people, but just people that were kind of more retirement age that didn't want to get out and go to the polling places. So you really didn't have a choice. You had to vote by mail. But there's just no way to check identification, unless they come up with some kind of a signature verification, some way to do that. So the person signing the ballot, when they mail it back, we can verify their signature. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I wouldn't want to do it all the time. No, I don't believe in it. I think people should go vote at the polling location. Okay. Just because of that, because we don't have any way to verify their identities.
Okay. So Secretary of State is in charge of Missouri's elections. What kind of coordination is there between his office and your office? Or are you pretty much, you're completely in charge of Cole County elections, yes?
Yes. So he regulates the statewide elections, like the August and November elections. They don't really regulate the April election, the municipality election. That's all on us. We don't report the results or nothing to them. They don't really follow up on any of that. But they are very good to work with. Secretary Ashcroft is really involved. Any problems we have, any issues, they're right on it. They help us 100%. He's very active. He always wants to be involved, and he's there for us when we need him. So I appreciate them very much.
So I would presume there's a fair amount of networking between yourself, other county clerks, the Secretary of State's office. I mean, what are the election issues or election strategies going forward that, voting has been pretty much the same since the Republic was formed. Do you see any methods to make it easier to just change how that voting experience for folks? Has there been any of those discussions?
I don't know. There's some legislation they're trying to get passed. I think a lot of the this last election, there was a lot of things like if I mailed out a ballot to you and you forgot to sign it and send it back to me, some county clerks were calling trying to get the ballot signed so they could count it. Other clerks were just putting it in a basket and saying it's not going to work because he didn't sign it, so it's not going to count. And they didn't bother to try to contact people. So I think they're trying to get some legislation passed where everything's more uniform. Like if you didn't get it notarized, I would call you and say, hey, you got to get your ballot notarized or we're not going to count it. Well, some county clerks, like, again, they just, with the signature, they just put it to the side. You didn't return it in right, we're not going to count it. We're not going to help you get it, right. So I think there's some legislation trying to get some kind of uniformity there. I don't know what's going to exist or what it's going to be about exactly. I think they're still working on it. I saw some stuff come across. In my opinion, I think we should make every effort to get every ballot counted we can. I mean, just people, if you go to the polling place and you put your ballot in and you marked it wrong, it kicks it back out and gives you a second chance to revote it. So why don't we do that in our office? If it comes back not signed, give you an opportunity to sign it. Yeah, that's just how I feel. But I don't know. I think they're going to try to get it to where we're all the same. We're all doing the same thing. Sure. So that'll be future legislation somewhere along there. I can't remember. I think they're trying to get some photo ID again, maybe something going on there. With this election coming up, we're still going to do our COVID protocols. We're still going to have our shields. We're still going to have sanitary wipes. We're still going to keep the pens clean. Mm-hmm. Everything we did in November, we're going to do again. We're just not going to have that COVID excuse to vote by mail. Right. But we're going to keep everything cleansed, and we're going to social distance just like we always did. So. Sure.
Steve, some states, my daughter lives in Tennessee, and so they have the ability. It's not just an election day. There's early voting, several days where they can actually vote. Kind of a variation might be no excuse absentee voting. What do you think about that? I mean, because for some folks, the reasoning of those who support it is, I work in a job where I can't, it's not convenient for me to come vote. And if you made it more convenient, I would exercise that right. Do you see that as a possibility? Early voting or more than voting on one day?
I would like to see it. I actually support that because I know people with kids are very busy. There's a lot of sports activities. They're go, go, go. So if you give them more of an opportunity to cast the ballot instead of just the one day, of course, I think your numbers would go up. Your turnout would go up. Sure. Maybe we wouldn't have a 10% in April. Maybe we'd have a 20% because people would have a better opportunity to vote. So yeah. I do believe that they should be able to do early voting. No excuse, whatever you want to call it. There's lots of variations to it, but I think people, I think they should be allowed to do that just for the convenience of it.
Sure.
Yep.
So
it would also alleviate our polling place, everybody coming together on one day to vote, like our presidential election, people stand outside. Maybe it would shorten those lines. People would have a better chance to get in there, and it wouldn't be such a stressful day on all of our election judges, and our polling places wouldn't be so crowded on election day if we kind of stretched it out. Maybe don't go for 6 weeks, maybe go 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Just go 4 weeks out instead of going 6 weeks.
Okay. So what kind of questions have you been getting from voters as this election gets closer?
I haven't got many. We actually, absentee voting started yesterday, Tuesday, and we didn't even have anybody come in. I was the first one to vote today absentee. I wanted to make sure the machine worked and that our poll pad worked and everything. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll have to be the first one. So I actually cast my ballot today without any problems at all. So okay. We're looking forward to everybody coming in, and it is a full ballot. I mean, there's a lot of races. The city wards have races. The county's got its sales tax on there, trying to get it renewed, and then I think one of the fire districts has a bond on there. They're trying to raise the levy, and a lot of the outerline school boards have races. So I'm really glad to see that. I really am glad to see people coming and stepping up and running for office. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let me throw out a couple things here. I will mention I'm often asked if there will be a sample ballot printed in the paper. And yes, I don't have the date for it. but Steve's office does place a sample ballot. Has to run a couple times, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
It'll run in our classified section, so you can watch for it there. The day before the election, let me look at my calendar, the 4th, the Sunday before the election, we will also print a voter's guide that will kind of give you a rundown of who's running for which offices, kind of all in a one nice graphic. And then now through Election Day, we have a schedule of stories, forums, just reader call outs. If you have any questions you specifically have for a municipal judge candidate, for a school board candidate, drop us an email. It's at vote@newstribune.com, and we will get those turned around to the candidates and get them published so that we can get your questions answered. So just as I know you're gearing up, we are as well. This is an incredibly important exercise we do in the community, and we really want to make sure that we can help folks get as informed as possible. Again, just as an editor, I will say if you have suggestions for things we should be covering, elections or not, my email is very simple. It's Gary@newstribune.com, and I welcome any thoughts you have on ways that we can improve, ways that we can do things differently.
So you know, the combined ballot that we put in the paper, it's a combined ballot for the whole county. We actually have 23 different ballot styles, depending on where you live or where you vote, with all the schools and fire districts and stuff. So we have 23 different ballots that we have to get out to the right locations. So the one that you see in the paper is just a combined of all those 23. So if you want to see your specific ballot, you can go to the Secretary of State's website and you enter your name, address, and everything, and then you can see your sample ballot specifically for you and see your races and what you're voting on.
Okay. All right.
And if you can't do that, you can call our office. We can mail you one. We have sample ballots. You can stop by the office. We'll give you a sample ballot. We'll mail you one. However, we'll get you one some way or another if you want one. So
yeah. Well, and I will say a lot of folks appreciate that because it helps them make their decisions before they get to the ballot, which helps keep the lines down. The lines move a lot quicker, so it benefits everyone if you kind of do your homework before you get to the voting booth. So
right, if you've already read everything and you understand, and you know, I tell people like during the last year's election, it was 2-page, you know, it's front and back. Well, they can get a sample ballot and they can mark it and take it in with them and just transfer it onto a ballot. Yep. And then shred the other one or throw it away, and then, you know, that way they don't have to sit there and try to read it all again and think about it all again. They've already made their decisions. All they got to do is transfer it. So
sure.
Yep.
All right. So Steve, we got one more quick question, then we're going to wrap it up for the evening. So Mel has a question for you. Are you there, Mel? I'm not seeing him. So
it's Madeline. She's got a question.
Just while we wait for Mel, I was just going to do a quick little plug. This is the first time we've used this platform, and we'd definitely be interested in hearing feedback from the people who participated in it. If there's things that you like or didn't like or ways that we can improve it, please feel free to contact me or Gary. I'll put my email address in the live chat, but please reach out, let us know what we did well, what we didn't do well, and how we can improve. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. You all did a wonderful job. You all did a very good job.
Well, thank you. Our intent is we're going to use this for the forums as well. Yeah. So you are a good guinea pig for us.
Hope I passed the test.
You passed in flying colors, my friend. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up. If Mel has a question, Mel knows my email address. He'll send it to me, and I will get it to you. So, okay. Steve, thank you so much, and as well as those attending for joining us tonight. And as always, if you have questions, just drop us an email. Gary@newstribune is the easiest way to get to me. So, Steve, folks, have a good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Gary. And thanks, Madeline, since she did all the work.
She did. Yeah.